You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My two guests today are Olivier Gomez and Kieran Gilmurray, and I am your host, Lasse Rindom. Hi, Kieran. Hi, Olivier. And welcome to this first time ever for The Only Constant with two guests on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to this because you are two brilliant guys I've known for a while, and I'm really happy to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looking forward to this, I think.
We'll see how we're going to manage, having two guys wanting to say things all the time, two people who love to talk, and let's see where that will take us in the format here. But, first of all, a question I've been posing a lot of the people in this space, also on the previous episodes of The Only Constant. So what have surprised you two the most about the current AI hype, right? The tech or the response or from people or what do you think? What's most, surprising? And Kieran, will you start by answering that?
Can I answer in a really odd way? And the answer is nothing. Nothing surprising, let's see, because take any technology over the last 30 years, ERP, CRM, RPA, IDP, it doesn't really matter what it is. You end up, and I like the Gartner curve to explain this at the moment, you end up with massive over exaggeration, which is really unfair on the technology. But you understand why people are doing it. You can't go to market and say, yeah, see this AI thing, yeah, it's kind of okay. It's not, that would not be the best marketing slogan. So you do to a degree understand why people are blowing it up. But the usual thing happens. There's overhype. So we got what I call now AI washing or Gen AI washing, which is you put the word Gen AI at the back of everything. And all of a sudden, some things are, some things aren't. But it's pure hype at the moment. And that really drowns out the good stuff. And I can't wait for the usual thing to happen, which is okay, let's get all the hype out of the way. Dear God, I hope people don't lose their shirts and a lot of money on this in between. Now let's use what is essentially an amazing technology. Let's also be honest, it isn't going to answer every single question. And I laugh. I seen a thing the other day that said, I want Gen AI to free me up time to do art and be creative and not do my washing. Instead, I'm spending more time doing my washing because Gen AI is creating my art and doing everything else. So let's get the hype out of the way. Let's move back to just good practical times. This is a brilliant technology time to be in where amazing things can happen. But unfortunately, we have this starter flirting stage, which can get messy before we end up getting real meat out of this. And by meat, I mean real business value.
Okay, but I want to get back to the surprise thing. You said you weren't surprised, right? I want to first ask you, Olivia, were you surprised?
I would say yes. I would say not the typical reasons, right? So I'm fully aligned with Kieran on the fact that this is again yet another shiny object. The bubble, the momentum, the excitement, everyone becoming an expert overnight on LinkedIn. So that's very typical. I would say expectation here when there is a new technology. What was really surprising to me is, and we know by the way that the rate of innovation is really accelerating. It's exponential, right? So what was surprising to me is that I realized, unlike blockchain, unlike RPA, unlike many other obscure technology, that there's sometimes a piece of technology that is more human than others, and that the acceptance of the consumer is is amazingly high. So no one knows what RPA is except a bunch of geeks, including us. No one knows what ERP is no one understands blockchain. But I can tell you that everyone. I was in Africa last week in Togo, where the internet connection is not always there, electricity is not always there. I was talking to a bunch of kids, university kids, and I asked them, obviously, how many of them are using ChatGPT? That's a typical question. Well, it's like 60% of the kids are using it on a daily
Oh,
basis, right? So the point here is, what's really surprising about this technology is because it is capable to speak human. It's able to interact, naturally with human. The acceptance, and we could see, how OpenAI, a number of user was actually skyrocketing. This was surprising, right? I was not expecting a technology to have so many people in the world adopting it straight away, right? This was the surprise for me.
yeah, that's the people talk about it as the new interface to everything we do with technology, right? And it's so easy to use, right? It's uh, I actually had someone last year say everyone knows transformer architecture. I was like, no, not that. Everyone doesn't. So I don't. I'm not saying I do either. But you're right. Everyone knows the ChatGPT. And don't you agree with this, Kieran? Isn't this something that surprised you as well? That's also why you said no. I'm not surprised. I remember the first days after ChatGPT came out. I was like, what the crap is this?
Yeah, mixtures. Let's see. I think when they meant transformer technology, do you remember the toys from the
Yes,
1990s?
I know
That's, I
those.
think,
Yeah, I can do Optimus Prime.
yeah, that's what they meant by everybody understands transformer technology. I've seen the three movies. There are 5 or 10 in the franchise, so it's kind of funny. Look, okay, when the iPhone came out, all of a sudden, to a degree, it was surprising because it just did something in a way that we've always been doing it, but just
Mm.
differently, in a way that, as OG says, mass consumers can suddenly get. I haven't been in a bank since 1990 or so. I don't know what year it is, but I haven't been in a bank in a long while. I dealt with what you might call chatbots for a long, long time. I'm going to say chatbots, and then chatbots with AI, and I understood how valuable they were. I was a head of data science for 13 years, so I understood what AI could do in a really practical business sense and understand what it can't do. So when you combine what I would describe as the useful consumerness of an Apple like experience with a massively powerful technology that everyone can get, because now remember Apple, instead, I love my
Mm.
BlackBerry though. Now Apple allows me to do something really easily like a human. Like, we're not sitting here born with our fingers on a keyboard. We're verbal animals. We like to tell stories. We're part of a herd, and how we join that herd is by communicating, visually, verbally, whatever. So now you've got an Apple like experience with a really powerful technology that allows us to communicate in a great way. And rather than it just being what I would describe as narrow AI, in other words, retention model, credit model, debt model, all disconnected models, now we've got something where we're sitting there going, we can ask it almost
Mm.
anything, a really great answer. And, we always did that forever in work. We went to the go to expert and we got excited by them, and they got asked 1,000 questions compared to anyone else. Now, if we use this technology right, bit like our iPhone attached to us every single moment of every single day. Uh, if we use it right, we'll even use it more. It will truly become that co-pilot that we've always wanted, that brilliant colleague. But with all that and all the excitement, obviously comes risk. So I'm not, I maybe slightly surprised the growth of it, but when you combine all those things
Mm.
together, you're going, actually, it just makes
Yeah,
sense.
obviously, but and this is not. This is just a response from the market, right? The technology itself. I think that was surprising. You must have been surprised by that as well, Kieran. A little bit, sitting there chatting with it. That I felt special.
Do you know? Look, I'm surprised at how good it
Yeah.
is, because even at this stage, now go back a little bit, because everybody got excited November 22nd, 23, 3.5, but three was out, look at the numbers, 3.5, three was out before it,
Mm.
and. So it's new to the mass market, but
Yeah.
you've sat there before with Transformers, like you've sat there before with AI. So, and it's not to underplay this, because trust me, this is brilliant tech. I was surprised at how powerful it was so quickly, able to get us, 1,001 things. I'm surprised now. Like, I haven't looked at a browser in must be 2 years, or a Google search engine. Sorry, not a browser. In the last couple of years, I just use this every single
Mm.
day. I've thousand things on here that make it all
Mm.
work.
But I think that one of the things that one of my just before we did this podcast, I spoke to a partner at our company, and he said that how he just read a post from someone who said that the CFO will not be needed, that he'll be automated in a couple of years, right? And he also said, how is this going to look for the business controller in the future, And I said, I want to bet, I said, that we're going to have even more need for controllers in the future because of this, right? But every time we've innovated something new, we've just added to the complexity. And every time, we might as humans get less productive, but that's because productivity is happening, in the background behind us to some extent, and we just manage it and control it. So we're not really, there's no idiot job producing, tapping things anymore. It's all about responsibility all the time, right? So am I right in that? Would you also bet that it'll just keep on, the complexity of what we're doing will just increase? Or would you say that, no, I think we'll get to this haven where we're not going to do anything?
Yes.
Olivier.
Yeah, this is a very good question. I would say so we are not going to go into the typical, fear, job replacement, and all of that, because this is a topic that has been covered, 5 million times already, and we are all, clearly understanding what's going to happen by well, at least we are able to predict fairly well what's going to happen based on what we've seen previously with previous disruption, previous
Yeah, you
revolution.
remember the RPA, with Gardner saying that, RPA will be your next boss, or what was it
That,
in
that's the
2014?
point,
You
right?
remember
So
that?
I think this is kind of clear, right? But the point on the complexity, right, is that I have a mixed feeling about that. Let me explain. On one side, obviously, the world is getting more complex, um, because the underlying technology we are using is more complex, and frankly, less and less people are truly understanding, the guts of the technology. But at the same time, the world is getting simpler and simpler. So the interaction that I have with technology, right?
Mm.
Think about input output here. The way I am interacting with an AI, ChatGPT, right? I hate keyboard. This is a bottleneck for me. Keyboard is a bottleneck for my brain. Not that my brain is super fast, but that it's my hands that are slow, right?
You are also the only person on LinkedIn that's ever sent me voice messages on the chat, Olivier. So that makes sense.
Yeah. So, and frankly, okay, we could say, okay, this guy cannot type, so that's it. It's not entirely true. The point is, there's a certain amount of brain power inside human, that there is now a certain amount of brain power, slightly different brain inside machines,
Mm.
and the bottleneck is the input output, right? And my point is, we see clearly an evolution where those bottlenecks will go, either using voice, so you can talk to machine like I do, or getting a little bit creepy and putting brain implant. We've seen that, which is good and bad. Okay, it can save a bunch of people, make people see and walk and all of that, but it's also crazy. My point is, once those bottlenecks will be removed, and they will be removed one way or the other. The Google Glasses 5.0 might end up doing the job or whatever, and AI becoming multimodal, meaning it can see, it can listen, it can watch a movie, it can tell you what you see. Life is going to be a lot more. Life with technology is going to be a lot more natural, a lot more human-like, right? You're going to be able to talk, you're going to be able to interact, you're going to be able to see, and the technology will see what you see. So in that sense, it's going to become simpler for me, right? So while technology is becoming crazy complex, algorithms, speed is a problem. Size and speed are limitation for human brain. If there's too much data,
But,
forget about it.
but
If it's too fast, forget about it. But so it's more complex in that sense, but it's going to be way simpler, where we are going to naturally, the movie where the guy is falling in love with the machine. We are going there. We are going there.
But you bring up something that I think is really interesting here, right? Actually, because what you're saying is that in order to make life simpler for us as humans, we have to make it even more complex on the back end to some extent, right? These crazy chips that Nvidia is making, all that, the whole setup is just super complex, and that isn't that the definition of estrangement. You can answer whoever you want to do. Like I don't. Like we've said this. With the meat I buy in the grocery store, I don't see the cow anymore. Right? It's the same thing here. We don't even touch our servers anymore. We just have them somewhere in the cloud. Where is the cloud? Who the crap knows, right?
But why do we care? Who are we talking about? Let's see. If we're talking about average consumer, I've got into my car. My car is one of the most complex pieces of machinery that's taken about 120 years to evolve. I don't give a monkeys. I just want the damn thing to work and
But
perform
that's the
when I need
productivity
it to
market
work.
thing, right? But there's also the thing, with people are like, yeah, but if you lose touch with what we're doing, oh, depression sets in. Blah, blah. Oh, all these sociological studies. Have you seen
Are,
those?
are you depressed that you don't know what your carburetor does every day? You're really not. You're depressed when something that you need to work doesn't work when you're in the middle of it. Everybody, the same with AI, RPA, whatever else. We have had all the technology in the world probably for the last 20 years to do probably 99% of the things we want to do. But like everything, it evolves. We're not driving a Model T Ford anymore. We're driving, whatever your car was. Let's call it a Lamborghini, whatever, because we'll convince the audience you're worth a fortune here. The technology will get better. As OG said, when I look at my BlackBerry years ago, and what we could do with that, it was amazing. Now, when I look at what I can do with my iPhone, I was booking taxis the other day online and following them, my banking apps, my phone apps, a book that I could read all day long. I just take it as granted because I know the technology is going to allow us to do it. People shouldn't have to think. We should have that iPhone experience and all of the things we're doing. I would agree with OG and slightly disagree. I think when it becomes more variable, it's more natural, and therefore the technology that we're dealing with, rather than trying to do something daft with a $4,000 headset with half a body of a cartoon character, that's not going to catch on. Whereas actually, if we use great technology to deal in a way that's most natural to us, variable, it'll be a lot easier. But I think we as humans, we complicate the life out of things all the time. Like you ask anybody these days, if you were starting your business from scratch, would you do it the way you're currently doing it? And 99% of people would say, hell no.
No, but but
But
there's
that's
a
not
this I just think there's a thing, right? Maybe it's because I'm a historian. I have this penchant for these things, right? I think that liberalism and the individual, the way with taking actions as a person is so connected with the Enlightenment that we know things, know how things were. We should, Immanuel Kant was all about, you have to get out of your self inflicted ignorance or something to become master of your life. That's a rephrasing of it, but that's the essence of it, right? And this is just saying the opposite, right? If it works, I don't give a crap, right? I just
Let me
Yeah, but there's too many things in our head every day long. If we thought about everything, our head would explode. That's just behavioral psychology in a way. So we take shortcuts in life. I'm not suggesting our technology is a shortcut, but we need to put things
but
into place
humanity is
that
not a
make things
shortcut, right? Olivier, what were you saying?
well,
Well, I think we need to be realistic here, right? So first of all, I think we've reached a tipping point here, where the amount of information that is being created um, by by the world for the world is reaching a scale, is reaching a size that
Mm,
is way over what a human brain can handle. So my point here is, I understand your dream, which might have been valid 200 years ago, given the amount of information and knowledge and books available. I think now we have to accept this idea that humans are going to be good at solving point problem and being expert in
mm,
a micro subset of the worldwide knowledge base, but that only machine will be able to master knowledge horizontally, and we will only be able to master knowledge vertically. And by combining the two, we're going to be able to cover everything. If you are, no matter how smart you are, right, if you are considering that nowadays your brain can manage and process all the knowledge that is being created. I would say just the data that has been created over the last 2 weeks, I'm already overwhelmed. The
mm.
amount of data being created. So we need to accept and acknowledge that the rest of the world will be simplified for us, and we're gonna be a consumer of the rest of the world, while we might be expert for a very narrow area, a very narrow domain, and that's the only way for our brain to cope. That's what I think.
The fear is just, machines.
But our brain, no, but hold on a second. Our brains have never been able to cope with all the information in the world. There's a great thing the other day. It says, before AI, it took 115 years to develop 1.5 billion images. You're talking about
Mm.
art, book, whatever. And then in the last year, it's only taken a year and a half to do the same thing. Our brains have never been able to cope. If we looked at all the stimuli we were coming across at every moment of every single day, it would just be information overload. Therefore, we take shortcuts, and that's natural. Most of those are defaults. Where I would argue, let's see, is because, as OG says, look, far more information, far more everything. We can now, and I laugh back in the day when Google Maps came out, we could visit the Taj Mahal, we could walk down a street in Bogota. No, we went and looked at our own back garden to work out where it was. The one thing that we could see every day. So again, we're funny when it characters when it comes to our own
Mm.
subjective world. That is the joy of technology, that it will, to a degree, simplify and organize and help us in the right extent make better decisions. But the key bit is we actually need to understand a little bit behind the technology as to why things are happening to avoid all the usual negatives, the bias, by just, over trust in AI, just like over trust in anything. So over trust in the nice extent, a politician, over
Mm.
trust in a business relationship or whatever. We just need to be that little bit more conscious. So use the technologies that we've got, allow them to simplify, and I'm saying by simplify I mean make easier our life, but actually understand what we're handing over, why we're handing it over, how the black box got created, where its biases are, and whatever else. And I'm not so much worried about AI bias, because remember, AI is a reflection of humanity. It's a reflection of who filled in what. And therefore, if AI is perpetuating biases and not being responsible at scale, it's down to the author of the particular
Yeah,
AI or
but
the
that
data
doesn't really
sets.
remove the problem of bias, Kieran, by saying that.
Well, it doesn't, because here's the bit. Here's the bit. We blame technology for something. AI is biased. No, AI is not inherently biased. AI is only biased if someone has put in a data set that's biased, okay, and they do and have. Why? Because we as humans are
Mm.
biased. So the AI in the slightest. Now, we very often can't help our biases. It's subjectivity. Our understanding of things evolves over a period of time. So, were we biased against other people of other colors, other races, other sexes, whatever else? Unconsciously, probably. We're made aware of it, we fix it. But now we've got more biases. The one thing that you could argue, if you did technology right, is that you could systematically remove some biases. Let me give you an example. We go to special psychologists who help us with our mental health. And we assume those individuals are intellectually wonderful because they've done their PhDs and have spent decades at things. But if I turn up, in a ripped pair of jeans, smelling, then their own brain
Mm.
takes shortcuts and goes, who the hell is this idiot in front of me? This whatever. Human bias kicks in, unconscious or whatever else. If I turn up dressed in a suit with a tie to the exact same individual, they immediately, oh, look, here's a professional in front of me. The brain heuristics are taking
Mm.
shortcuts. And it's proven, research shows, with greatest respect, we're all biased, whether we want to admit it or not, that even behavioral psychologists are meant to be fixing our brains bring their own biases. Now, if I'm conscious of all these things, imagine going in front of a very great conversational chatbot. And I'm not suggesting you replace a psychologist with a chatbot. It will provide scale and it will help you get there. But I could systematically, one by one, as I identify the biases, remove them out of the algorithm of the AI to provide mental health support at scale up to a point where I then can bring a professional in to help me.
So you want that? You want, Gen AI to look at your kids' mental problems before a professional comes in?
If it supports them. If it supports them. There isn't enough doctors in the world. There isn't enough
Mm.
psychologists in the world. There isn't enough money in the world. And therefore, if there is something that can provide a degree of support, and I'm not talking about, again, if you hear anything, do not hand your life over to AI or any technology. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we augment the things that we do or need up to a point where that will provide mental health support, emotional support, financial support, decision support, or whatever else. and again, understand behind the machine what's actually happening and understand when we need to hand
Hmm.
over to an amazing human being. That's what I would argue all the time. Both machine, AI, whatever it is, plus great human makes us amazing. I don't pedal my car. I use great technology in my car to get me from A to B, but I certainly understand what's happening in my environment, so I don't
Yeah,
make
because
mistakes, hurt
as
someone
someone said,
else.
I saw someone say the other day, AI has read the entire internet, right? But it can't read the room, right?
God help it.
Yeah, but
God
but it
help it.
can.
I remember a couple of years ago, Microsoft put it in against Twitter and expected it suddenly to come up with the most genius, unbiased answers. Of all of the
Mm.
places on God's earth to train a robot, Twitter is not the place to
No,
start. But guess
Reddit
what?
is.
We blame the bloody technology. It wasn't the technology, folks. It was the people behind the data that was being filled in and lied to it and got it to do all sorts of horse crap.
But we still create technology based on that, and we say so the technology is a problem because it's trained. But that's it becomes a chicken egg thing, right? But guys,
If I
you
may, if I
first,
may, let me jump in. I want to react
yeah,
on a number of things, and I want to share a couple of uh, um, personal things here, just to Kian said I would not trust AI to save your life. I strongly disagree with that. I think the answer is it depends. Okay, about 6 months ago, my skin doctor, my dermatologist, missed uh, a skin cancer that I had. He didn't see it. Human mistake. I can tell you that machine would not have missed that.
hmm,
So and I mean those kind of cancer, if you don't discover them early enough, you are basically gone, right? It's really aggressive. So I would say in some situation we know
yeah.
already, right? Another example. Um,
I hope you're good, Olivier.
yeah, yeah, I'm fine, right? So we saw it early enough. It's gone. It's all good.
Good.
But the point being here is I have many friends. They are doctors, and I can give you another example, right? My friends, I'm not going to give any names. French doctors, they're amazing, and fairly affordable.
And with amazing French names as well, I think.
Social countries. But anyhow, this is not the point. The point is they are consistently telling me the level of empathy that I am able to give at the beginning of the day is totally different from what I'm able to give to my to human
Hmm.
at the end of the day. My consistency here is pretty bad because I'm human. So if you show up at 9 a.m., you're gonna have a great doctor in front of you. If you show up at 6 p.m., you're not gonna have a great doctor in front of you because the guy is tired. Machine are consistently going to provide the perfect services, and in some situation I would say, although the machine is not perfect, there's bias, and the machine can, do a number of mistake, hallucinate. I would say human as well. And in some areas, I would rather trust the machine than human. That-
I actually get that because that's also some specific use cases having it, second opinion stuff and everything. I think that makes sense, and we're gonna have that as well. Uh, but I also think that this what you said with the energy level when it interacts with you, I think the only reason I know what good service is because I know what bad service is. I've seen that, right? And suddenly, if everything's just AI crap, you see, you talk to an AI all the time, it's always praising you and saying you're so brilliant and smart. It feels really plastically. It feels like I'm living in this plastic cage. Don't you get that feeling sometimes? When you're chatting with it, it's like, just stop being so nice.
Uh,
Where the hell are you dealing? I don't mean to
I
talk.
know.
No, but just don't get me wrong here. What I'm not saying want to challenge OG in this. I'm not saying a machine is always right or a person's always right or whatever, because even what you're describing there, OG, statistically, when you look at this, a doctor gets X right, so they miss things. In your instance, they miss things. A machine is only as good as the data that it feeds in,
Mm,
and machines by itself miss things. It's when you combine both, you usually get a better answer. And that's, take all the technology examples over the last couple of years. So I'm saying combine the two things together. Where I get excited about what OG is describing from a personal situation there is, again, let's be kind to people as well, because we expect doctors to be perfect. We really do. But A doctor's as good as the prompting that they received over the last, is it 1 year? 1 year doctor, 5-year doctor, 15-year doctor, 30-year doctor? Doesn't really matter. Whereas I can feed AI, a million images and try and teach it to do whatever. And then, when I put that with a great person, hopefully together, the combination of the two things allows both to be not miss as much. They will still miss stuff because guess what? No doctor's perfect. Guess what? No technology's perfect. But combine the two together, and hopefully you're combining the two strengths, not two weaknesses. Otherwise, you'll end up at a bigger minus.
Guys, this is, I think this has been the longest first question I've ever had on the episode. I love that, right? So I want to get to this as well, right? You recently, 1st of May, you released the A2C for generative AI, right? Kieran and Olivier, you wrote it together, right? What drove you to write this book, and who is it for? Olivier.
Yeah, I think that this is very interesting to ask that question. For me, the goal as a non-writer, as a technical person, to write a book is very obvious. It is to capture all the experience and the knowledge that I have in my brain based on my years of interaction with the real world, and to translate that into something that can be understood and digested by a portion of the population, for them to save time, for them to avoid making mistake, right? So that's really the logic here of writing a book. And we've been challenged on the scope of the book, the title of the book, the structure of the book, why a book, in 2024. So all of that can be discussed, right? And we could, but I would say overall, the feeling that Kieran and I have, and we have slightly different experience, although we live in the same domain, is let's take all the knowledge that we have, all the key concept that we master, all the scars that we have on our body, based on all the failure and success that we've been able to accomplish over the last many years. And I would argue that not everything in the book is Gen AI only Gen AI, right? There's a number of concepts that are wider than Gen AI, but that also apply to Gen AI, right? So
I was going to ask you that, Olivier. You're using your inference from your experience outside of Gen AI, because 1.5 years of Gen AI is not going to make anyone write a book about my life with Gen AI. That would be,
but yes, but let me answer that. But still, we see the same mistake over and over again. Although the technology is different, the mistakes are the same. And it's not because it's a new technology that people are not going to do the same stupid mistake, like running really fast in the wrong direction. This is happening all the time, Gen AI or whatever technology. So for the younger folks, right, the people that have less experience, it's still invaluable for them to understand, of course, a couple of key concepts and a number of key points around AI, but also to understand the rest. Trust me, right? Because we see that all the time.
Yeah. Well,
so now Olivier said that, right? So Kieran, what is the wrong direction people are running in? Because you wrote the book with Olivier.
Look, let me do one thing first. I like the way he said all of our successes and failures. Well, I'm the success side. So
obviously.
obviously. Yeah, isn't it quite funny though? All the people who've commented on the title and whatever else, and about the content, this durability. I laugh at this because a little bit like the boy goes home to his mom or the girl and says, "Guess what? I got 95% in my exam," and the mom turns around and says, "What about the other 5?" Aren't we dreadful as a species, where we look for things to point out that don't work rather than things that do? I'm proud of the book because, as OG said, look, the technologies, and we alluded to this in the very first question, CRM, ERP, whatever, it's changing technologies, but the lessons are exactly the same. Going for shiny new tool, which again, we're in the shiny new tool phase that'll do everything without focusing on business value, good governance, data quality, whatever else, all the same mistakes. Why, in my head, and again, OG and I wrote it for the same and similar and different reasons, is that I hate, it's the same as the first book here, I hate to see people wasting money. I get really annoyed at the hype phase. So why don't we write something really practical that people can pick up and put down, jump between chapters and whatever else? You don't need to be a technical god to understand this book, but you get the broad
Mm.
principles of what we're describing. And saying, just go back to stop getting excited about the tech. What is the business
Yeah.
opportunity? Notice I didn't start with business problem. What's the business opportunity you're trying to grasp, or potentially the business problem you're trying to solve? What is the least frictional, most customer satisfying, if it is one of those processes, things that you could possibly put in place in terms of a flow or a process or whatever. Now, what technologies can you apply to make this the most intelligent, least frictional, gorgeous key moment of truth experience that you could possibly put in place? And now let's make sure we implement that in a succinct, organized way to deliver as much value as you possibly can, to use great tech, great people, great
Mm.
process, always allow you to deliver something. So that's what it is. Pick up, put down, inexpensive book. Yeah, as
Yeah.
OG says, look, anybody says they haven't made mistakes, an idiot. We make our mistakes, we learn from these things. We've codified it so that everyone can avoid some of those mistakes, get out of the hype, not waste precious resources and time. Because the one thing that myself and OG violently agree on, we don't hide the knowledge we've got. If you notice what we give away on LinkedIn, our own websites, and whatever else, we constantly get people asking, "Why the hell are you giving all that away?" It's decades of experience that we pump out to help others all the time. We're firm believers that all boats rise on a floating tide, and therefore, the less money we waste, the more we create success, the bigger the
Mm.
pie is going to be created for everyone.
Yeah, but also because there's this thing last year, right? What you said, people are wasting money. There was so many POCs just on Gen AI again. We see that again, like we did with RPA. The POC cemetery is there again. I'm bringing that word back. I think I said it in one of the last episodes, the POC cemetery, and people are like, oh, I didn't hear that word before. I was like, okay, that's a word I talked a lot about during the RPA days, right? And we have that again with Gen AI now. People doing things thinking this is an anything machine that will replace the whole contact center or something like that. Just and finally we can get rid
We
of
do,
finally we
but
can get rid of all of
what
our
I
problems and all of our people and oh
goes back to that psychology bot I was talking about earlier on for all of our problems. Look, let's dial back just a moment. Not everybody sets out to do stuff wrong. My first POC, POV, whatever you want to call it, about for RPA was an absolute mess where I learned the most things. Not
mm,
everybody starts with our experiences because we've seen this over the last 10, 20 years, all the different techs. We're now seeing it again. So we know what to avoid and we know what to do. So some of it is silliness. You turn up to a consultancy firm and they basically that, the CFO, she's asking for a Gen AI POC because one of the board has said, I
yeah,
just need Gen AI. And again,
yeah.
off you go and you sign the reassuringly large check and you do it. And that's a criticism and not of everyone in that pipeline. Others are starting to learn out. Like, as OG says, the mistakes we made over the years probably wasted a lot of money for people. All that feel has allowed us to get to where we are today with all the knowledge that we've got, so that the next project is far more likely to succeed than anything else, regardless of
Also
the
because the
technology.
hype is maybe slowing down a little bit. I don't know, but Olivier, I want to I think that this weird thing about people wanting to replace all of their problems with the technology. Like, I've seen that a couple of times, right? Already in my relatively short career. I'm only 40, right? Why do we do that? Why do people not respect that the things they have right now working is actually working? Why do we want to replace everything and get rid? Why do we do this? Why do we say, oh, RPA will fix everything? What is the everything to be fixed? That doesn't thing work? We've never, civilization wise, we've never been on a higher spot, right? We've never been richer, happier, healthier.
Why why do people change cars all the time? Why do people say that they're gonna go to the gym on a daily basis and then they don't? Why do people get divorced? Uh, I think there's a human aspect here, which is people are always looking for something new, right?
Mm,
And if one of the most difficult things to do in life is to have discipline, because discipline is boring. When you say you're going to be doing the same thing on a daily basis for 5 years, I can tell you this is not many people can do that, because people get bored of that. So people are looking for new things, right? Typically top down from the board or let's say the leadership, the CXO level of a company, they are asking for new stuff. They are actually the ones saying, we need innovation. I translate, we need a new shiny object to show that, we are moving forward. So if you come up with a perfectly, well articulated plan, but that plan is that boring, like, we're gonna keep doing the same stuff over and over again for 5 years, and it's going to incrementally, 1% every month improve. You're gonna get shot. People don't want that. People want the new cool stuff, right? I give you an example, right? I was in conversation with a very large company, multi-billion-dollar company, office of the CTO, whole bunch of very smart people, and they are like, okay, exactly that conversation. We need some cool stuff. And I'm not even, trying to convince them not to, because that's it. It's decided that cool stuff is Copilot. We're gonna buy Copilot for everyone in the company. That's a lot of people in your company, my friend. That's going to be, a very expensive bill. Okay, yeah, but it's cool. It's great. And then you're going to why? You're going to
Because it increases productivity. But how do you measure it? Oh, I don't know. It's a productivity.
right.
Microsoft said
So
it.
so you are always, ending up in the same stuff.
Yeah.
People cannot help going into this new shiny object stuff, falling in love with the technology, which is one of the things I say all the time, right? They are literally now in love with Copilot, all the CTOs of the world, and they want to save the world with Copilot, not OpenAI, Copilot, and if you look at Copilot, it works well with your SharePoint when you take it out and you try to apply it to a different knowledge base.
Mm.
So my point here is that's human nature. They cannot do the boring stuff.
It's like, yesterday we did a presentation in Aarhus in Jutland, where I had my friend Alan also co-presenting with me, and he said, like in parents' meetings, he said, we need to find who's gonna, volunteer to be, the contact parents or something like that, and everyone's like, oh, I'm not here, I'm not in the room, right? And that's the same thing whenever you go, and we need someone to take responsibility for GDPR. Oh. Or data modernization. Ooh, no one wants to take that one, right? But who wants to be AI? Me, please. I like to do, AI. I love AI, right? Everyone's hands up everywhere, that's the same thing, right, going on there. But what I actually think is interesting with this AI wave is that it's everything's the most of the big best practices of the world is going to be revolutionized with AI by the big software vendors, right? If you have the latest version, if you have your data in order. So data modernization, legacy replacement, the things we've been speaking about for 20 years, and everyone's been like, oh, I don't want to be the person to take that one. Who wants to modernize and replace our old SAP installation? No one puts their hand up, right? But now they have to do it because that's where you're going to get actually the best practice change. You're actually going to be left behind if you don't do these things now, because that's the reason to go to cloud, because there's AI in cloud, right? Finally, there's a reason to get rid of all the crap in your basement and go to cloud.
No, but there's not. There's not. Again, let's just challenge that one
Good.
there. The number of times I have seen people just lift and shift their crap into the cloud. What cloud allows you the opportunity to do is restart and reassess. Instead of the gigs and
Mm.
terabytes of data that we keep just in
Yeah, yeah.
case, if you're just using it as a store, then yes, you can do things quicker, better, faster, more secure, remove the infrastructure from your own premises and allow you to do amazing things if that's your only reason for doing it. And I'm not talking about accessing SaaS-based apps, allowing you to not wait I was about to say name of a server, but I remember back in the day, 30 years ago, ordering a Dell server took 8 weeks to arrive. That's the way things were done, folks. Then you realized there was a bit missing out of it. So then you waited another couple of weeks. Then you got a CD in the post. Folks, look that up on YouTube to see what that one is. And then you installed the software and off you went. Do you know what I mean? The world has changed. But I think it's the same as what OG's describing there. We're an impatient species. We're consumers. We want things yesterday. And in business, it's the same. We want the thing that's going to, knock the ball out of the park as cheaply, as quickly as possible to make ourselves look like
But don't you
heroes in
think they
business.
realize now, you can't get that on your ERP system if you don't modernize it?
Yeah, but it depends. It goes back to what I said earlier on. We understand all these things, which is what we're describing in the book there,
Mm,
which is, look, folks, there's some fundamental basics. You may not know this because you may be at a certain point in your career, or whatever, but there's some fundamental basics here. The technology doesn't work by itself. You actually have to have a business reason behind it, and you need people who truly understand it to get it to actually deliver the value that you want in your
yeah.
way for your business.
Great answer. Great answer, Kieran. Great answer, Oliver. I love that. So what should people actually do, Olivier? What should they do?
About
What
what?
should they do?
Buy the book.
Yeah, yeah.
That's it.
No,
Jump
but
on.
the thing is, how do you
Drop
capture
the
this
microphone.
anything machine in a book, and what should they actually do? To move out of this, and how, people are constantly worried that they're behind, right? Is it possible to be behind when everyone seemingly is? Is OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, and so on, are they competitor to every company out there right now? What do you think, Olivier?
Yeah. So what should people do beside buying the book? You mean? Uh,
And
uh,
reading it and posting
so
that you read it on LinkedIn.
this is a very interesting question here. There's two things here. There's, are you behind, and then is it over? Meaning the big guys, like the I call that the Coca-Cola situation, right? And I will explain. And I think we are going to enter a very interesting time. So again, you are always going to run behind technology, and there's no way that you're gonna be capable. One of the things that we present when we do keynotes with Kieran is that, I don't know if you heard about the mad landscape. The mad landscape is, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and data landscape of all, well, the main tools of that ecosystem. And just plotting the main tools on one slide, it's overwhelming. And it says it all. It says that basically you're gonna be behind, and you can only be, you know, fairly on par with the latest evolution on a very narrow scope. Back to what I was saying before, and the rest you're gonna be behind, and you're gonna have to rely on other people that are, the expert, and they are able. Right? You cannot follow everything everywhere. So it's just by nature, the complexity and the speed of that evolution, that ecosystem, is basically pushing us into a corner that is going to be smaller and smaller versus the total picture, because
Mm,
the total picture is growing exponentially, and you're going to be the master of a smaller domain. That's my point of view. So yes, you're going to be behind. Is that a problem? Not at all. Right? We're going
mm,
to have this ecosystem of people. We could talk about this AI agent ecosystem model where you're gonna have and I'll go there, but you're gonna have basically top top of the range knowledge and expertise in one area, and that area will be that, and the rest you'll have to rely on other people. So I don't think that's an issue. I don't think as well that you should be afraid of running behind. I think this is by design, right? So point number one. Point number two, is it over? Are we now going to be, Google and Amazon and Microsoft? By the
And
way,
Olivier, give me the honest answer, not the no, it's not over because you can call me. Just give me the honest answer. Is it over? Is Microsoft winning the whole world?
so,
Google, have we lost?
so first of all, the US centric version of the technology is heavily fighting with, let's say, the Chinese version of the technology. So that's not, let's not forget about, other version or other instances of those technologies. It's not because we hear them less in our world, in our Western world, that they don't exist. You go to China, you're gonna be amazed. You're gonna be amazed. People have been paying with their Retina, since 5 years. They are now paying when they go in the underground in the metro with the palm of their hand. Baidu is crazy. I mean, I'm not. WeChat is an amazing platform that, by the way, Elon Musk is running behind. So my point here is, there will be multiple big guys fighting. It's not over in that sense. Plus, let's remember that the core value of AI is not the model; it's the data. Okay, And if you are sitting on a unique set of data because you are producing a unique set of data, this is what we were discussing in Africa last week. Okay, guys, yes, there's no way you're gonna be, you're gonna have the dollar, the euro, the whatever, a currency to be able to compete with, a Microsoft, a Google, a Baidu, or whatever. But you're gonna be sitting on unique set of data, and you're gonna be able in a very specific area to be the king of the world, to be the king of the AI world for that specific expert system. So we're not talking about AGI here, and even AGI will be, less effective and efficient than an expert system that is fed with the right data. So the battle is going to be with the data. And right now, the big guys, they are only targeting let's say systems and AGI using public data. So you're gonna have, in my view, right, you're gonna have the guys that will master the public data, the AGI of the public data,
Mm.
and then you're gonna have a whole bunch of expert system using private data that will be protected. That will be IP, and they will be doing amazing stuff because the data they have is unique and no one else has it.
So time, Kieran, to stop, just giving our data away to everyone online.
Look, uh, it's more nuanced than that. We want all the conveniences of the world. We want everything hyper personalized because, to a degree, we're wonderfully
Yeah, that's what we said
gorgeous.
in the beginning,
Well,
right? The interfaces has to be slick, right?
yeah, so if you want all that, then it comes at a cost. Uh, what we need to do, just legislation, good practice, responsible wise, and you hope technologies will do this, but welcome to capitalism where it forgets the negatives and it promotes the positives, is that there should be responsible use around that. So that I know, for example, if I give you my access to my DNA, so for example, you see lots of people actually signing up to genealogy websites by handing across a swab or a sample of their very true human unique essence. And I'm talking about biological, and the company gets your DNA and discovers your ribonucleic being. Everybody gets excited about that. Goes, great! I'll find out I'm Norwegian,
Mm.
half, hopefully to God, not half French, and maybe something else in there as well. And all of a sudden, you'll have to look it up online. It was hacked.
Mm.
And when you look at the terms and conditions, it's I now can do whatever I want with your DNA. And you go, oh no, that's not what I signed up to.
Mm.
Now, do I blame the person or the company for again signing it across and then allowing it to be hacked? Which now means if we take this to a dystopian extent, an insurer gets hold of that data and goes, well, I can see from your DNA actually that I'll not cover you because you're too high a risk.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, hold on a second. Now we're into, from a purely commercial point of view, that makes total sense. Why the hell would I sign up a customer that's suddenly going to cost me billions and zillions? From a more global, let's make sure everyone's okay sense, it's just not so cool. So again, it depends. Bigger questions than probably our three brains can actually answer, but I'm sure we'd have a good enough go with it with ChatGPT, Gemini, Bing, Bard, whatever you want to call it, helping us. The data bit, just to go back to that, this is where technology can really help. There is too much information in the world. There always
Mm.
has been. Now we're just creating it at a far greater degree. And it goes back to if technology can help us in as unbiased way as possible, subject to our own biases, make sense of all these things, brilliant. We can't expect to know everything. That's called, AI. And I'm tongue in cheek joking here. But as long as we can master life as much as we possibly can using great technology, and as you said earlier on, we've never been richer, never been healthier, never been more technologically advanced. If we can do that in the most sensible, practical, human beneficial way possible, then we'll end up in a far better place than we've been in humankind to date. That I hope.
So first of all, everyone is actually half Irish. I find out whenever I talk to people who've done this DNA
Not
test, because
me, not me.
Irish people just fled the island, right, and then just proliferated
Well,
around
we're,
the world.
we're very prodigious when it comes to spreading ourselves across the world. And who are we to argue that our gorgeous Irish self is irresistible to male, female,
my,
everyone
my
else?
wife did the test. She was like, apparently I'm like 5% Irish. Where did that come from? I don't know.
Well,
Grandmother? What happened?
probably
Like,
Probably.
No, no.
And what OG doesn't realize is probably Irish in there somewhere,
No,
but
no
that's
way,
just
no
a
way.
benefit. That's what I like to. Do you always say we augment the world with AI? I like to think we've augmented the world with my Irishness and then some.
but Kieran, really, are we being like I asked,
Really, yes.
no, no, but like I asked, like I asked Olivier, right? Are we behind, right? Artificial Irishness, is that what we're having here?
Yeah, look, we're always going to be behind. Sick it up, folks. Do you know what I mean? It's just our brains, biology. We just can't cope. There's too many things
Mm,
that could, even before computers, one person couldn't have consumed all of the art in all of the world or all of the music that was ever created to date. It's humanly impossible. It's the joy where technology, for example, if I look at art or music, I don't need to, although I love to, by the way, go to look at galleries. It brings me joy. But now, if I can afford it, if I can't afford it, if I do have time or not, I can go into see any art in the
mm,
world practically. I can walk through the Louvre, using artificial reality, virtual reality, or just a video simulation. I can see the art. I can understand the artist. I can see everything else they've done. I can understand what influenced them by having all of this rich data available to me like I never had before in the world. And this is the bit that I love about technology. When you look at how societies evolved, let's see, it was doctors, it was, whatever you want to call it back in the day, bankers and dentists. They made money. The rest of us tilled the fields and hoped that we were given, some crumbs off the table. Now with technology, because I know I helped some companies set up around, disadvantaged areas of the UK. Now, thanks to technology, I can have a job. I can travel the world. I can stay in my local community
mm.
instead of moving to the biggest city to do whatever, and I can create value and I can create community and I can get access to knowledge or technology or whatever. And the people that I'm dealing with, OG mentioned a moment ago, the doctor using amazing technology to allow us to do amazing things. We need to play to our humanics. We need to be, judgmental, creative, argumentative individuals who, use technology for all the things that it can do with our great humanics to allow us to create a better workplace, a better society, or whatever else. And let's pray that we do that. I suspect we will make mistakes unconsciously. Dynamite was invented to move mountains to allow us to promote commerce, to connect, ourselves to our distant relatives, to allow us to expand into new and fertile ways. Look how that turned out.
But
And
there's also,
AI will.
companies companies are designed to some extent, right? Policies are designed, strategies are designed. There's a lot of design around companies, but with individuals, we just download something and then we adopt it, right? Companies don't do
But it's
that.
both. It's both. Let's see. There's policies in companies and they're bad.
Yeah.
Go back to work from home. Don't work from home. Do this. And we've all sat in those big corporates going, "What the hell's going on?" As individuals, we create policies, heuristics, and shortcuts for ourselves.
But we sort of
So
but we sort of also adopt technology, like we just whatever, we just go into it and then we start Facebook. Oh, let me see what this is, and suddenly 20 years later, right? I'm a flat earther. But you know,
are
no,
you?
no, I'm not. No, no. But
No, that PhD
but
worked out well.
you get my point, right? The thing is that, but the installation in companies is not the same as implementation, right? Adoption is not something you download, but for individuals, to some extent, it is, right? We change as individuals in a more chaotic way, but maybe the drag of a company is actually a good thing here, right? To sort of say, is this something? How do we want to do this, right? What do you think about that?
Yeah, but it's just a step a little bit more deeply into it,
Mm,
because we talk about drag inside of companies and some are bureaucracies. You just get bigger and bigger. There's more policies and procedures put in place to allow the machinery to operate. And then when it comes to doing what everybody now wants to do, which is move in a really agile way and react to everything, of course the machine just doesn't turn. It's like an oil tanker.
mm.
Great big companies, and again, we're now using NVIDIA as the example, can operate at the 2 trillion level and operate in a really agile way. So you can construct anything in any
They're
way
not
that
making
you
a two
want
trillion
to.
revenue, but they have that
No,
valuation.
no, and
Yeah,
again,
obviously.
that's another story.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
So, yeah, and again, we've seen it before, and not to suggest they're not a great company. Again, it's just our hype has probably pushed up that value, but great technology. So it's up to us to design. This is the bit we keep forgetting. It sounds as if when we talk about technology, we're subjugated by it. We're the victims of it. We will end up doing what technology wants. The world will be taken over by
Mm.
technologies and robots will control everything. technology, and it doesn't matter whether it's AI, RPA, ERP, CRM, blockchain, whatever, it will only do what we want it to do. We're the masters and mistresses of our own
I
destiny.
always say that, in the end, in the last fractal, it's a human demand, no matter how far you go, right? To some extent.
Yeah. So again, risk. Don't hand everything over to technology. Remain our own wonderful, gorgeous, skeptical, optimistic, obstinate, go forward selves,
But
and try and understand this. My bit is, I just want us to, and this is part of the reason, back to the book. Again, not to promote the book, which is brilliant. It goes
please
back to, look,
do promote it.
let's try and do this in a way that we're conscious of the steps that we take, so that we don't end up wasting time putting humanity, ourselves, in a position that ends up net worse as opposed to net plus in anything that we do in any shape, form, or other, generative AI being the latest thing.
Yeah, so that means also taking a step back and just, wondering, is this what we want to do, right? But this whole flux, right, Olivia, the whole flux of continuous improvement that all consultants really want to promote, because that's something that gives us a lot of, work. But is that really a good thing? I want to ask the Frenchman here, because, French people, they, every time there's a change or an improvement or something, they go on the streets and burn things, right? So did you go on the streets and burn things when AI came out, Olivier?
Um, I I I think this is something that is good and bad, right? So I understand that people are by nature, especially French, resistant to change, and it's the comfort zone, right?
Mm,
And it's very easy to understand, right? If you are doing the same stuff over and over again, and your brain is in standby, it's very comfortable, and then you have to make an effort, and
mm,
people are lazy, including myself, and you have different type of lazy people, but
obviously.
we all end up being lazy, so we don't want change, right? So the point being here is we need to understand the nature of the change, right? And to your point, this continuous improvement is sometimes absolute BS, but sometimes it is required, right? And it depends on the nature of what you are trying to achieve. Sometimes people don't want to change, and they have to be pushed to. Otherwise, they will die. Change before you have to. So that's the GCO quote, famous quote. Sometimes you have to force yourself outside the comfort zone in order to embrace the change. Otherwise, you live in an
Mm,
ecosystem where your company will just disappear, and we've seen that so many times. People not taking the decision, not making the change, and basically dying. But at the same time, changing for the sake of changing, the new shiny object syndrome is also a problem. So it is here, the typical consulting answer. It depends,
mm.
uh,
Good
meaning
one.
meaning that if you for sure,
Let's do a big PowerPoint analysis
if
for you
you are
first.
if you are not embracing the new waves of technology, at some point you will be in trouble. You
Mm,
will be impacted, falling behind, leapfrogged by other folks, and you might end up dying. Even if you're in your business, the barrier to
yeah.
entry is huge, like Coca-Cola, right? Who can compete with Coca-Cola? Not many people in the world. Although the product is whatever. But the point being here is, this is really important to understand, is the nature of the change here is going to depend on a number of things. And then you go left or right, you resist the change for good reason because it's a bad change, or you have to embrace the change because it's a good change, right? So
Mm.
the continuous improvement, yeah, my short answer is it depends.
It's just really difficult, right, to know where, what is the good change, right? Because we don't know the end game to this, right? That's where it becomes really difficult to figure out what's my next step, right? And that's also why we might need to get to proximate objectives. I want to ask you about that in a second. First of all, I have something that might turn out to be a trick question. So I want to ask you, if you want to answer this. You've both been the center of the recent PA and automation hype, right? But how is this hype cycle any different?
How dare you? We were in the middle of the RPA industry, and thank God we were about OG to make sense of the hype.
Yeah.
I think that's what you actually were implying. And again, now, as I said,
But is this different? Is
We're
this
in
hype cycle different?
Yeah, it isn't. It isn't. You know what I mean? Again, to go back to the consulting answer, and by the way, you can hire OG or I for consulting expertise and digital transformation.
This episode is
Uh,
sponsored by.
this is sponsored by IAC and Digital Automation Robotics Limited, available in all good websites
Irish
nearby.
people. Irish people.
It
Come on.
was we spread. Remember we talked about earlier, and thank you for your Irishness, everyone listening in. It goes back to, as we said a moment ago, it really depends. If you're getting huge value out of generative AI, and you should be. And again, this is an 80-year-old overnight success story. Remember AI as well. Then it's not hype. You're using great technology to deliver tremendous business value, or in OG's case, medical value, whatever else. Depends what the safety value, you name it, it's all there. If you're not conscious of what you're doing, you're wasting a pile of money. You go, oh, it's hype. This is a load of rubbish. And my God, we've seen that. That's why I go back to why we wrote the book. Look, it is hype if it's not delivering you value, if you're wasting money on POC cemeteries or POV purgatory, whatever you want to call it. If you don't understand what you're doing, you waste a lot of time, money, effort, cash, and whatever. Of course, it's hype. The technology works. AI has worked for decades. I think 15 years ago, I was doing retention models that were accurate to 96%, driving massive value for business. Certainly wasn't hype then for us. For other companies, it was. So look, we're obviously slightly biased here in a way, and I say it tongue in cheek. Like, buy the book, and if you don't do that, go on websites, understand where you're putting your money, work out the business opportunity, the business problem first, then work back to the technology, and then you will get amazing value in business. Or in our instances as individuals, just use great technology to not look in your back garden when this suddenly becomes available. Use great technology to augment what you do. But that involves a step, and that step is actually going away and understanding how to use it and learn it in the right way.
From
not
your own
wrong.
opinion as well, right?
Yeah,
let
of
me
course,
let
of course.
me comment on your question, right? I'm slightly, so let me be a bit aggressive here, so we have a bit of fun. So I'm
Good.
slightly disappointed by the question. Let me explain why. The fact that you compare an RPA or an automation cycle with an AI cycle is probably telling me that we are not aligned on the nature of that hype. Let me explain. Okay, RPA is something that no one knows in the world. You can go around the world, talk about RPA. People will say, "What?" Right? No one knows what it is. This is a really a micro world of geeks
Yeah. Like you
and
said, yeah.
very right where there's 8 billion people on the planet. Okay, 65% of those people have access to internet. That's roughly
So this is a completely different hype, Olivier.
that's a
That's what you're
five
saying.
billion. That's a five
Yeah.
billion dollar 5 billion people hype we are talking about here, which has nothing to do with the shitty RPA automation small scale hype. We are in a totally different world here. This is basically everyone in the world knows ChatGPT the same way they know, I don't know, Michael Jackson or Michael Jordan.
Olivier, I love this because you fell directly into my honey trap here, right? So why did you write a book if this is a completely new hype? And how can you use your experience from previous hypes if this is a completely new thing?
So if you read the entire title of the book, I'm sure you did not. Okay.
I
Obviously, I
did.
mean, let's be fair. We are surfing the Gen AI wave, but
Mhm.
we are specifically targeting business people that will want to apply this technology in their environment in order to deliver value for their environment. We are not in the B2C, type of
No.
world where I can use ChatGPT to do my homework, type of conversation. We are in the B2B type of world, right? So yes, we are surfing the Gen AI wave, but we are really focusing it on, because we get those questions all the time. Hey guys, I need AI in my company. I have no clue. Right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah,
the
exactly.
most common question we get at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. That's in
Yeah, but let
practicality,
me
right?
also answer in how disappointed I was in Lasse's question as well,
Thank you, guys. I love
and
this.
and his insinuation again, I'm glad you called out his lack of preparation for his guests here
100%.
today. Absolutely appalling. Really, the quality of the individual we deal with here is just shocking, to
I'm,
say it
I'm
mildly.
sure the guy did
For
not even
anyone
read the
listening
book.
in, by the way,
Never bring an
we're
Irishman and a
joking here.
Frenchman on.
Look,
No.
it's exactly for that reason that we're not got caught up in the hype. Do you know what I mean? You've written a book, you can uh, pick up and put down, that goes back to what I describe as
Yeah.
sensible fundamentals. And without risking the repeat of, business value first or opportunity, work your way back to it's that book. So we're counter hype, let's say at the moment. We go, look,
Yeah.
all this happening, we get frustrated by it in the most gorgeous sense because we're just, violently against people wasting time, effort, and
Yes.
money. And by the way, just so anybody, for anybody's sake, we're not making any money out of the book. Trust me, you self-publish on Amazon, whatever you charge, you get a couple of pound. That money's going to charity.
Mm.
So we've written it at our expense. And trust me, writing a book is not a cheap process. To put it out to market, to allow people the opportunity to learn from, as OG says, being transparent, our own pluses and our own learning cycles over the last 20, 30 years, so that they avoid this, so that all boats float, and the benefits of the book, hopefully to goodness, go out to thousands of people, and also raise some money for a very deserving social housing charity to
Mm.
allow people to actually gain a foothold in
That's
life.
an even better reason to go get the book, right? So, but I think you came up with brilliant answers, both of you, to my terribly unprepared,
Oh,
stupid
it was
question. Thank you,
appalling.
guys.
I'm so disappointed. OG,
Appalling question.
do
Yeah.
you know what he needs? He needs to put the book into Chat GPT at least to
Yeah.
get a
Sure.
summary of it.
Actually,
Please tell me the
none of the.
questions I
Yeah.
should have asked. Maybe that's what he did, OG. That's what I'm now fearing.
So, I'm going to give you just okay. This, the A to C of generative AI implies some level of, practicalities. You've written that book, right? So, what is the proximate objectives for companies, right? What should they look at right now? What is the current 1, 2, 3, right? The A to C, the 1, 2, 3, and will this be different in a year? So, Olivier, what do you say?
Yeah. So what we try to do here is to try to picture. We have kind of a three-step approach here in order for a company to approach Gen AI, right? And this is something that we have described a couple of times, right? And it's for us very logical, and hopefully this is going to be logical for everyone who wants to basically inject LLMs and Gen AI inside their environment, right? And I'm going to spend 2 minutes because again, it's all in the book. But the approach here is very simple, right? There's always a first very simple step for company to learn about Gen AI, which is the what I would call the consumer step, right? And again, Kieran came with three levels with three names, but in order to oversimplify that, right? There's the consumer step, which is start using ChatGPT or equivalent in your company to augment your employee in a very simple way. Of course, you got to take care of the privacy and all of that. So basically, you buy whatever it is that you like as an AI capability. It's $20 a month for an employee. You give it to all your employee, and you get them to basically familiarize. Right. When I was in Africa last week, I showed to a few folks who never used ChatGPT what it can do, and I'm talking about the free version of ChatGPT, and they were like absolutely amazed, right?
Mm.
They were like jumping up and down,
That's
like.
what we need to remember, right? This experience, if you go back 2 years,
So you do that. You basically start with that. You get everyone happy, excited. They see the value for them, for themselves inside, the office wall, and frankly outside the office wall as well. And then you move to the second level, which is then you go into enterprise grade type of solution where you leverage, the I would say some of the company data. You basically use the Microsoft or any platform. Everyone is going to have their own AI version. I'm not going to give any names, but pretty much enterprise grade type of capability, which requires a lot more money, but at least you get to a point where you maximize, the enterprise capability inside. And then the third level, which is true innovation, where you tailor a model, you build IP, basically, right? You build IP by doing something that no one else has, not using the regular tools out there in the cloud, building your own because you want to augment your own company and you want to stand out. You want to be the best consulting company in the world. Therefore, and by the way, large consulting company are doing that. They build their own Gen AI model that is unique and that is going to be, for what they do, way better than the regular ChatGPT type of stuff. So those are the three layers that typically company needs to go through it. And obviously, the underlying requirement for all of that to fuel all of that is dead obvious, and it's data.
Mm.
Get your stuff together when it comes to data, and clean, aggregate, manage, prepare. This is something that is going to happen, and those that have that part, which could be 50% of the cost of your overall AI strategy, 50% of the bandwidth, 50% of the effort. If you have that together, then frankly, if you run, and we talk about Gen AI, but frankly, you want to run an ML model, you go to Hugging Face, you pick up 20 models, you run it against your data, you're done.
Yeah, mine, I'll just do version because I recognize time here. I talk about three phases, and I like to think I said this, but again, it's maybe a large international company have written the damn thing. I talk, so as OG says, look, the first thing is start experimenting with the
Mm.
technology. Crazy not to, it literally will be AI everywhere. Although let's just remove a little bit of the hype, as we consistently have done if you'd have read the book, which is AI has been around for years. You know what I mean? We're using AI now behind the scenes here. Netflix AI, choosing what book to buy
Yeah,
in
so me.
Amazon.
Everything's so me, right?
Yeah, it's been around for years. Do you know what I mean? So again, it's not nothing new here. Generative AI is again technically not new. What is new is the ability to engage with all of this great technology, knowledge, data, whatever else, in a way that's both easy and natural to consume, as OG mentioned, multimodal voice, whatever else, at a price that is just ridiculous. Look at what you can get for if you want to pay for it. You don't even need to pay for it,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
$20 a
true.
month, we have access to everything we would potentially want, subject to obviously the data
Yes.
that's in there, the model, blah blah blah. So it's all there. So one, play with it. Two, read, folks. Buy the book, read the book. Audible. It'll be out in a couple of weeks in Audible. Just spend a bit of time learning. Don't jump a shiny tool, run at it and go, oh, it's not giving me the answers that I want because I can't prompt it in a way that I need to verbally,
Mm.
visually, graphic. Everything that's worthwhile takes time. Someone once said you can choose between comfort and growth. You can sit and not grow, not learn. Guess what?
Yeah.
Digital Darwinism certainly exists. Or you can learn, and out the back end, you'll become greater. So learn, and I call it taker, which is take the technology. It's available now, and away you go. But learn. Taker maker is go and buy something. Amazon Bedrock, whatever else. Open Azure. All the models are there. You don't need to put in your own. Build an
No.
entire ecosystem inside of your office, and you can do it in a secure manner as well. And please, folks, if you're listening, don't just dump stuff up online and wonder why it's suddenly made available to the world. And Shaper is through necessity or through innovation, where you might have your own LLM inside of your own architecture infrastructure. So if I'm a huge bank and regulations in my particular country tell me I have to have it, I have to have it inside of my own company. But again, that's the most expensive, most potentially creative and competitively advantageous piece, depending on how you do this. So look, learn it, use it, understand it, move through the cycle. Don't suddenly jump in at the deep end and go, I can't swim, but might work out
Mm.
okay. That way there, you will progress in the right manner. Obviously,
That is the approximate. Yeah, I
having
think that two
on
great
board,
answers.
that will tell you all that. Yeah.
I love to add, modernize as well, but that's just me, right? Modernize your legacy crap. Anyway, but that's not as sexy. But this has been a really really great conversation, guys. I've loved having both of you on. I think actually there's so many great nuggets here, and I think it's been fun as well. So and now we come to the last piece of the podcast, which we always do. And this time I have two guests here to do it. So I need to go. First we're going to do Olivier, and then we're going to do Kieran. And are you ready for the final question here?
What if he
Yes,
said
we are.
no? But let me open up Chat GPT and I'll be ready.
Are you ready, Olivier?
Yeah.
So, Olivier, what is the only constant?
Yeah. So that's for me something that is extremely simple to answer, because no matter what the scope of the answer is, whether it's life on this planet, all humans, or whether it is very narrow, looking at a company or a piece of technology, I think the only constant that we always find everywhere, um, is, and before I answer that, right, I want to add something else. That's why, human. I always have in mind, why is life designed in such a way that human die? The reason why we die is to allow for humanity, for next generation, to rebaseline. Okay, what is normal for me was not normal for my grandmother. What is normal for my daughter is not normal for me. Every time there's a new generation that basically comes, the human, I have this amazing capability to rebaseline when they are young. Most of our internal operating system is actually created when we are young, and that's why we die to allow, guess what, change to happen. And for me, the only constant, clearly, in life, in technology, inside company, is change. And change is something that is happening all the time. It's happening in nature, it's happening with human, it's happening with technology. And this is, for me, something that you're going to find everywhere. Now, to make it a little bit more subtle, the the thing that is probably slightly different depending on what you are looking at is the rate of change.
Hmm.
Okay, the rate of change might be different if you look at life on the planet versus technology. The speed of iteration is obviously totally different when we look at how Nvidia is using AI to build the next gen GPU versus how, I don't know, a rabbit or a fish is evolving in the sea, right? But so the rate of change is extremely different. And by the way, the technology has a rate of change that human will have difficulty to follow. It will take us 3 years to understand the code that has been written by technology in 1 week, right? So we're gonna fall behind. But for me, clearly, that's something that I see everywhere. You can turn it, it's a dead, for me, it's a dead obvious question, and it's a dead obvious answer, which is, the only constant in life is change. And without this happening, there would be no life. If you remove change from the system, there's no life. It's directly correlated.
That's a good answer, Olivier. And it's also, the rebaseline thing. I think I love that as well. Thank you very much for that one. And Kieran, what
Yeah,
is the only constant?
yeah. Again, the only constant is Lasse is unprepared for his interview. That's constant. It appears just since the very beginning. Lasse
It's called
of this.
talent. It's called talent.
Oh, or a lack of. That's the only one. And as OG said, even down to the last question, so obvious. Oh,
No. We're going to start that one over, Kieran. That doesn't work, right? Kieran
yeah, no.
Gilmurray, what is the only constant?
Apart from Irishness spreading wonderfully across the planet, it goes back to what OG says. The world is changing. It always will. It always should. And by changing, we hope we move in the right direction, which is progress. We've talked throughout this session on AI and its pluses and minuses. We could have talked about any technology. Ultimately, we as humans, we crave things. We're consumers. We're sometimes awful. We consume a planet, in all the wrong ways as well as all the right ways. I would say that as a constant, what I'd like to see is change continuing, technological, economical, political, social progress to actually happen, for us to recognize as humans that we're in control of everything that we do, whether at times it feels like it or not. And as long as we have a North Star that suggests or points to a direction where we will economically, socially, naturally, humanistically, friendship wise, Irish spreading the globe wise, be in a better position by doing all these things, all the better. So I'd like people to continue to change, but understand that with change comes pain. Welcome to the growth or settle doing nothing or comfort sign. Just do it in a conscientious way. Nothing that's worthwhile is fast. Recognize that it's just if it's a 1% improvement today in every part of every life, business, or whatever else, it will result in a much better world. So change is the constant, but I'd like to see this change, let's say, done in a most human, gorgeous, societally beneficial way possible.
That's a great answer, Kieran, and great that you both aligned. Mr. Kieran Gilmurray, thank you so much for being on The Only Constant.
Pleasure. Thank you for inviting us and having fun with it.
Monsieur Olivier Gomez, merci beaucoup pour la participation dans The Only Constant.
Merci beaucoup pour l'invitation. Ça a été un plaisir.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
You've listened to The Only Constant, a podcast sponsored by Basico.